friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Excuse me?
Play! They're all shooting in the cuts? Ima? They're all shooting in the cuts, Ima?
I don't get what we're doing.
On ho! Over here?
Are you trapped in some sort of a reverse time warp astral phenomenon?
What?
Are you being sucked into the fifth dimension right now? Yell incoherently if you're being sucked into the fifth dimension right now.
Sorry. I was... Woo! I got stuck in Minus World for a second.
That was weird.
Yeah. Sorry. Minus World is a trip. I think I got on the wrong side of the bed this morning, and I sort of clipped through.
As happens.
And I just... if you get up on the... You're supposed to get up on the left side of the bed, and I got up I was sleeping upside down, like with my feet at the head and my head at the foot.
Right.
And I got up as though it would be on the left side, but then that's actually the right side in that case. So I was upside down getting out on the right side of the bed, and I think I just clipped through to Minus World. And so I was stuck, and it just took a tremendous amount of effort to pull out. I wasn't sure if I was even in it until I realized you couldn't understand me.
Yeah, you were saying backwards things.
Well, see, from my perspective, you were saying backwards things.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but anyway, I was screaming. "Get me out! Get me out!" toward the end. Mm-hmm. But that actually, from your perspective, was the beginning.
Oh.
But I just started with. But I was just saying when I started, I said, "Good morning, friends, I'm mad at Elon Musk. How are you today?"
I'm also now mad at Elon Musk.
Elon Musk must be held to account not for Minus World. That's not his fault. That was my fault. But, so mad at Elon Musk for his stupid monkeys with their telepathic brains.
Well, how many monkeys had their Neuralink battery catch on fire?
Exactly. And their heads just went ablaze like an iPhone battery in your pocket.
Smokestack died of cranial fire.
Right.
Neuralink battery explodes. Filament 11.
Right. And he will never answer for that. All the hypothetical monkeys, his heads catch on fire. But more than that, I'm mad at him for presenting his Neuralink thing as though it's something new and not something that's been done for like 20, 30 years.
Would you perhaps be referring to Dr. Jose Delgado?
Yeah, and others.
Others, yeah.
if you haven't seen it, Elon Musk likes to pretend that he is bringing about the future in many ways. He likes to be like, I'm bringing the future. And he has spaceships and cars that drive self. And now he has a flamethrower company. And he has a tunnel company that he's going to make tunnels for like trains. And then you look at it, it's like, these are just normal tunnels, Elon.
Yeah.
These are just tunnels. I don't know what kind of cyber tunnel you were hoping to build. But there's really only one way. You just make a hole in the ground. And now he's got this Neuralink thing with this monkey playing Pong, playing digital ping pong.
Yep.
With his brain. And it's neat. It's neat. But it's the only thing new about it is he made the device small and hooked it up over Bluetooth instead of a wire coming out of the creature's skull, because this has been done. People have been trying to like hook up electrodes to people's motor parts of their brain to drive like wheelchairs and stuff forever. And they've succeeded as much as he did with this monkey and the Pong thing. It's just was found not to be very practical, because you have to calibrate it for everything you want to do. So like he had to have the monkey play the Pong with the hand joystick for like hours to
so
get
they can
the thing to
locate the probe.
Yeah, to get the Neuralink thing to know what was up and what was down and when it wanted to go. And then so then once it calibrates, then it knows, okay, this is how you play Pong. But then you have to be like, okay, now we have to calibrate the motor movements for, I don't know, whatever monkeys do with their hands for peeling a banana. So when you telepathically want to peel a banana.
So if you're going to heal a quadriplegic with the Neuralink,
it's not going to happen.
You have to calibrate them with something that they are unable to do.
Well, but also the making a gross, like all it's done. So when you want to move a joystick up or down, the impulse to move your hand starts at your brain. And so all it's done, and it's not trivial. I mean, it's a cool bit of medical thing to do, but it's been done, is my point, before, for like decades before.
Yep. Is
you take an electrode and you put it up the nerves from the hand, up the arm, on the shoulder, up the neck, into the head, and you just attach a little electrode in there that picks up when the signal's happening. And that way, before it gets to the hand, or even taking the hand away from the joystick, then that thing sends the signal to the joystick electronically rather than through your flesh arm. It sends it through an electronic cord rather than a flesh cord, right?
Right.
And then makes the ping pong go up or down. But we've done that. But that is it's neat. Like I say, it has uses. But going from that to then making a quadriplegic walk is a huge step.
Indeed.
That has no, like he's just saying, look, we did a thing that's done 30 years ago. Now the next step is a thing that no one's been able to do. And it's just all hype, I think, at this point. Much like his cars that still don't drive themselves all over the road. Despite him saying that it's going to happen in 3 months' time for the past 5 years. He's like, oh yeah, it's coming right around the corner.
Well, they do drive themselves all over the road.
Well, that's true.
You know, just not maybe in the ways that you want them to.
Into people.
Did you see the thing about the tape?
And off the road, they drive them off. Huh?
Did you see that when the guy put the tape on the speed limit sign?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 35 mile an hour speed limit sign. Somebody put a 2-inch piece of tape on the 3 to extend its middle nubbin, the middle nub of the 3. So it looks more like an 8. And it was one strip of tape. So it didn't, to a human, that would not really look like an 8. But the car saw it as an 8 and proceeded to accelerate to 85 miles an hour.
Yeah. Because cars are stupid.
Well, yeah.
And AI is a meme.
Mm-hmm.
AI is not going to. There's in AI, the whole concept behind AI, like generalized intelligence, is so weird. Like, because we think that we are going to like replace humanity.
Right.
Because we can make a machine to play chess really well.
Well, there's a fundamental error that the world is data. Okay? And so, you can make an AI take a chunk of data and analyze it, very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And then says computer scientist whose perception of the world is altered by his profession and education. Computer scientist says, "Hey, but isn't the world just data? If I can get an AI to analyze this data, I'll just make a bigger one that can analyze the world of data, or the data of the world. And then I'll basically just make a, wire person, circuit man that can process all the data of the world. But the fundamental error there is that the world is data, and the world isn't data. It's something else.
The world is language.
The world, it is language.
Yeah.
It's many things that aren't properly defined as data in a way that can be just analyzed by a computer. And when you try to do, there is some data to the world, and the computer can see that, like a 35-mile-per-hour sign or a painted line on the road. Those are all data. But if you were to present the world as only its data contents, it would be a pretty inadequate picture of the world.
It would be the syntax of the world without the semantics of the world.
There you go.
And you just get nonsense.
Right.
It's just like It's like seeing the marks on paper, and all you see is the marks and don't realize they're sentences.
Mm-hmm.
You just see it's like reading hieroglyphs or something to a person that doesn't know how.
Right.
Which sometimes I'm suspicious anyone knows how, and they're just making it up.
Could be.
But yeah, we have this weird. If something weird happened with when the computer beat the chess master, and people because here's the thing. Like, to my knowledge, Usain Bolt doesn't sit around and think that he is worth less than a machine because we can make a motorcycle. Right?
Right.
They can go fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the mountain guy from Game of Thrones, Thor, I don't think he feels that machines are better than him because we can make forklifts.
Right.
But for some reason, us building a machine that can play chess better or math problems faster, people think that means that we've made a device that is superior to us. And that's it's just a fast abacus, really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why people jump to this conclusion but this is what Elon Musk sells, is that in the very near future, we're going to be computer people, flying in our Teslas in space with flamethrowers. And
which is a beautiful vision of the future.
It's a great vision of the future, but it's not. What he does is he comes up with an idea, like a big dream, and he doesn't know how it works or if it's even possible. And then he just does the Google method, which is how Google got popular, of just paying lots of money to hire the best people you can find in that field to just make it happen.
Yep. And
throw an infinite amount of money at them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find the best experts in the world, and you throw an infinite amount of money at them, and then question mark, telepathic space travel or whatever. But that doesn't work if the thing you want to do isn't possible. Like
right.
in the world. Like, if making a car understand what the road actually is and not just dashes on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no consciousness to the car. See, this is the problem.
And there's another element to this that people need to understand. It's that if you have a small group of people that are seemingly accomplishing amazing things, hopeful, exciting things that bring you joy when you think about their progress and see the new updates of what they're doing. And they're doing this in the midst of a society that is in a rapid spiral of decay, as ours is.
Right.
Then you need to realize that one of two things are happening there. One is that they are selling you a hopeful story to make the pain of the collapse of your society more palatable.
Mm-hmm.
Or two, they are planning an escape.
Well, yeah. I'm
inclined to believe it's option one.
I mean, this is what Tim Dillon talked about some time ago. He said we're just increasingly getting to a world where like everyone's going to be sitting around watching TikTok, and then Elon Musk and Taylor Swift are going to get on a spaceship and just wave by.
Yeah, and we'll watch.
Say, have fun with Bernie Sanders and.
Right, and we'll watch them for entertainment. So that's the thing. These guys are. Some people will go to space, I guess, but you're not. You're gonna watch them on your iPhone in a containerized living cubicle, eating soy meal, waiting for your shift in the code mine or whatever.
And I have a friend. He's an older gentleman, and he's also mad at Elon Musk. Because he said if his SpaceX stuff is so great, why ain't he got on a rocket yet? Like, is he so like it's his rockets? Why don't he just get on it and go up to space? If he's he's talking a big game, but he's not getting on himself.
That's a good point.
Like supposedly he loves space and like wants to be buried on Mars, but he ain't even gone up to low Earth orbit yet. If I had a rocket company, I would already be in space. See?
That's an excellent point. Why hasn't Elon, or maybe he has and we just don't know, but I mean, I don't follow his maybe we should fact check this criticism, but
I'm pretty sure he hasn't.
Okay.
But I'm just telling you, listener, that the Neuralink thing, nothing impressive has been shown yet. And I mean that
this stuff has been done. It
was impressive 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done anything new yet. A far cry from healing paralyzed people or curing Down syndrome or autism or whatever he thinks he's going to do.
Yeah, Jose Delgado did this work back in the 50s and 60s, and he had monkeys he could control. So the monkey wasn't just sending input out to the computer was controlling the monkey.
Yeah, well, we here at MAPS also have monkeys we can control.
Yeah.
We haven't released them yet.
Right.
But they're there in case.
In case. So watch it, everybody.
And the government of Nigeria should know that. Just because we're in our war in Africa, our continual we have an army of macaw mercenaries.
Yep.
Wait, is that right? Macaw? That's a monkey, right?
Macaws
are the bird.
Macaws are bird.
Macaques.
Yeah.
Ah, see now they know that I'm bluffing.
Macaques aren't very ferocious anyway, I think.
Yeah.
They're more
now
of
they know that I'm
they're
bluffing.
more of like a, snack monkey rather than a attack monkey.
Now they know that I'm bluffing.
Yeah.
I was trying to Ugh. There was that guy in Africa who he was like I was trying to think of who he was, and he would have these military parades, and where his military was in obvious cosplay gear, like they were dressed up like mech robots or something, and he was trying to pass it off as real.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought, man, what if you just like said, I have like an army of tigers or something, and you brought them, and then he was just like this big back and forth who could have the most pretend army.
Yep.
That was always a dream of mine. But it got derailed because I was going through masks, like to protect me from the COVID that is also not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out, are you aware of this latest This latest thing, this latest craze with the masks among the truth community, the conspiracy community?
Probably not. What is it?
This threw me for a loop. Did you know that the masks now, according to the folklore, because that's what a lot of this is, it's folklore, have Morgellons disease in them?
Oh, bringing out the classics.
Bringing out the classics.
Conspiracy deep cuts. I love it.
I saw like 7 videos pop up at random.
Yeah.
Of people all over the internet being like, look at my mask. And they would take their mask out. They'd like unwrap it from the package. And they'd zoom in with their phone, or maybe they'd have a video through a magnifying glass or something. And they pan over the fabric really close, right? Like really slow.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd stop and say, look. And then you'd see like there'd be this tiny little black fiber sort of wriggling inside the fabric.
Wriggling, you say?
Yeah, like a little tiny like worm-like thing sort of moving in the fabric. And then they pan over some more and they'd look for another one, they'd find one. And all these people are claiming to find these little tiny, small hair-like worm creatures inside their mask fabric. And I, for the listener's benefit, I attempted this. I got some face masks unopened. I opened them and I looked and I found nothing. So it could just be my batch doesn't have the creatures in it. But I've yet to verify this personally. I would recommend that our listeners, if they have any of these disposable masks, they look and just tell us if they found any tiny worms in them.
I'll use my microscope to investigate my masks, but I'm pretty sure that Morgellons disease is a hysterical condition by people that pick their skin too much.
Well, here's the thing about it, because last I checked, last I was looking into this particular lore, Morgellons disease was just people would find what looked like fibrous tissue coming out of a sore or something,
right?
In their skin. And they would like pick at it and they'd pull it out and they'd be like, look, someone like put like a fiber in me, like, I don't know, some sort of cloth fiber.
Right.
And like Morgellons disease was like it was started in this lady named Mary Liato or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably saying her name as wrong as I said macaques.
That's okay.
But she had a 2-year-old son with sores that he developed on his lip or something, or under his lip. And he would say that it was like itching or felt like something was crawling or something. And she said that she kept taking him to specialists, and she said she would find like these little fibers coming out of his sores.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some reason, this just spread. And everyone was like, I also have like a spot on me, and there's like silver threads coming out of it.
Right.
Which to me always looked like some people just had ingrown hairs and were becoming psychotic.
Well, that and literally everything that we cover our bodies with is made of tiny fibers.
Right. And maybe it gets stuck in a sore.
Right. I mean, you're shedding fibers of all kinds constantly from your clothing, from medical dressings, if you are using any, because they're all made of sort of just tangled up fibers.
Right.
Yeah.
And so officially, most doctors consider it a delusional order.
Yeah.
On the level of like what do they call it? Psychiatric parasite syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where you believe you have parasites but don't.
Yep.
Which is just a form of hypochondria, where you think you're sick but you're not.
Right.
Right. But somewhere along the way, and this is where I left off on the folklore, is that somewhere along the way, people said, oh, well, this Morgellons disease is that's the alien implants. These tiny fibers, they like resonate with, they're like little antennas.
Right, yeah.
And that's how they keep track of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was for a long time. that was what people thought. But I checked out, and I wasn't really paying attention to developments in Morgellons disease folklore.
Okay.
And then I looked, and then this came up, and I was like, wow. So now, since I last checked in, they've gone from being fibers to now they're like living tiny creatures.
Sweet.
That move. And they're also like in chemtrails apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Now. And in DARPA or something, has something to do with it. So somehow along the way they turned from just like a fiber coming out of a sore to now they're like nanotechnology worms, I think, that they embed in things that go over your mouth so they can get in your nose and mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And go down and do what? I don't know.
Make you itchy.
Yeah. And so I looked. I looked for the Morgellons because I believe that if it's an easily testable thing, right?
Yeah, why not?
Like if they said the dust from chemtrails is laced with arsenic,
mm-hmm.
I'd say, well, that's interesting, but I don't really have a good way to test that, right? But if this is an easy thing to test, like do these masks have tiny worms in them that you can see with iPhone magnification? And I couldn't find any, but maybe you will, listener. If you do, send us a video into the website.
Indeed, I'd love to see that.
And then we will have because it doesn't cost you anything to just pull out your phone and zoom in on a thing.
Yeah, why not try
and this
it?
This was such a strange turn for the Morgellons disease. Like I thought Morgellons disease was going away, and like no. Actually, now it's like space worms, and it's so fringe that the YouTube algorithm hasn't even picked it up yet to ban it. Like if you have, like I found it no problem on YouTube, like these people with their video, and they're all speaking German for some reason. I guess Morgellons has moved from the Anglosphere to the German sphere.
Okay.
But if normally in YouTube, if you put in like standard conspiracy fare like Plandemic or Elizabeth Taylor's Bigfoot or something, it will first show you a bunch of videos from quote-unquote official sources that says it's not a pandemic. It's very real. Elizabeth Taylor's not Bigfoot. Right? And then you scroll to like page 1000 and you get the thing that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But this, it just comes right up because it's such a weird new idea that masks have Morgellons disease in them that I think they don't even know what to do with it.
Well, good. I'm glad that the conspiracy community's staying creative out there.
We got to outpace the algorithm by you got to be progressively more. I wonder if this is happening. Like the algorithm to censor the conspiracy theory is sort of in an evolutionary process, forcing the conspiracy theorists to outpace the algorithm by becoming increasingly fringe. Like now it has to get even more weird so it can't even pick it up. Like now we take the UFO, now we take this weird psychosomatic disorder, pair it with UFO abductions, and also the pandemic with nanotechnology.
There was another mask conspiracy going around, which is actually true in a way, saying that the masks had endocrine disrupting chemicals that were going to emasculate young boys from wearing them. Which, okay, sort of, in that masks are made of synthetic fibers, which contain plasticizers, some of which are known endocrine disruptors. But so does your like North Face fleece that you put on this morning. So,
right?
But put it in context.
It's this general thing. This is all pointing from a larger conspiracy theory that everyone seems to believe, which is that trace amounts of a thing can have very large macro.
Right.
And that really doesn't happen. I guess if you have trace amounts of it, like your whole life or decades.
Right.
But this is really where the whole pandemic scare is fueled by this idea that like if there's a drop of virus on a desk,
right,
then we're all gonna die. And that really, like, this idea of concentration is lost on people.
True.
Like how much like if like this is my thing about chemtrails. Like they may be spraying stuff in the air. I don't put it past them to be that weird and think like, oh, let's try to spray something in the air. But the planes they're spraying this stuff, and then you say, okay, but what is the amount of material they're spewing out compared to the volume of air here in the sky?
Right.
And it's so small that basically you're going to have almost nothing, like your molarity is going to be zero. And so then it's probably not doing anything. And the same idea that like, oh, well, but if there's a trace on the, and like trace means like I'm talking like nanograms or something, very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
When you get up to milligrams and you have that every day, okay, maybe, because that's in the realm of like the amount of like a medication. But like picograms and stuff, it's tiny. It isn't gonna do anything.
Right. But people really do have to consider and learn about effective dose and exposure, not just saying, is it here or not? Because something like Teflon literally is all over the world and on everything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go away. And it's harmful for you. And so people hear that data point and they say, oh, well, I guess I'm doomed. And just whatever Teflon does, it's going to happen to me. Mm-hmm. And so then they don't think about it any further and maybe say, oh, maybe I shouldn't live near this old industrial complex that used to make fluorocarbon compounds. Because it's like it's already everywhere. But in reality, if you live near a place like that, your exposure is going to be a lot higher than if you lived in, rural Montana. Yeah.
And we have this culture of the fear of the trace amount.
Yeah.
That is ubiquitous. We fear the trace amount of everything. And then it just is like, well, then also there's the trace amount of nanotechnology space worms.
Well, it overloads people's fear centers so much that they can't use that capacity for effective and rational decision making.
Mm-hmm. Because you should not be afraid of everything, because then you can't.
The whole COVID phenomenon has totally overloaded people's fear center of their psyche to the point where now we don't know what to be rationally afraid of because we're maxed out all the time. Mm-hmm. And so people are doing dumb stuff that should worry them, and that under normal conditions they wouldn't do, because they say, oh, there's probably going to be some negative consequences to this course of action. But they're just doing them because their fear meter is pegged.
Yeah, they have the dying person saying, please let me see my family. And they say, don't worry, I'm going to put hot water in a glove.
Oh, that is so awful.
And lay it on your hand.
It is so awful.
It is just like you having a loved one. If you saw that.
No sane society. So what they're doing, the nurses are, because all these patients are in isolation, they're laying in bed dying of COVID or something else. Their family's not allowed in the hospital. So what they're doing is they're filling up a rubber glove with warm water and like attaching it to their hand so it feels like someone's holding their hand while they die alone.
Which it wouldn't even feel like
No,
that.
I would be so insulted as I lay dying. I would say, get away from me, you idiot nurse. I want to see my wife and children.
I'd say, well, what I would do is I would say, thank you so much. Please come closer so I can thank you. And then I would just cough on them.
Yeah.
And say, I hope you get this COVID. That is it.
Man.
What are you doing?
No sane society would ever think it's okay when somebody is in their last moments of life to strap a warm rubber glove and call that like comfort.
Yeah, it's not even.
That's a society that has gone completely insane and has been paralyzed by fear and propaganda and is just doing whatever insane nonsense to hold up this structure to keep the narrative from crashing down on our heads and realizing what horrible evil that we've all done under color of COVID control. But it's gonna come crashing down.
It is. And then just like now everyone's like, oh, I was against the Iraq war.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I was against the Vietnam War, when at the time, like, so many people were for it.
Yeah.
But now that it's clear it was a bad idea, everyone's like, "Oh, I was not for it."
Yeah, you're not
It's
going to
be the
find
same
a
thing.
lot of
Everyone's
people.
gonna be like, "Oh, I was against the lockdowns.
Yeah.
I was. I would. It wasn't." And you're like, "You stayed in your apartment for 7 months."
Yep.
And then you wore 3 masks on your face and covered your body in alcohol.
Yeah.
I remember it. Like, no, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna happen. It's so frustrating. Because people can't learn because no one ever says, "Yeah, that was a stupid thing."
Yep.
This is how you get like, well, this is how you like go through the pipe when you're not supposed to, and you end up in minus world.
But at least
Boop, 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 boop,
at least there's a monkey playing pong with its brain. So
Yep.
we can still have hope that we're gonna get through this because Elon Musk is doing technology.
He's put a Bluetooth chip in a monkey's brain inside of a tunnel in an electric car,
Giving him a
flamethrower,
Yeah.
and he's shooting it into space. And then
It's all gonna be okay.
progress is here. We're one step away from the USS Enterprise.
I know you all wanted some hope after the end of that depressing monologue, so we just gave it to you. We delivered yet again here at the Mystical American Patriot Society.
I could get a monkey closer to space than Elon Musk, maybe.
Let's do it.
I mean, because I'm not gonna get him back down.
Right.
If we just put him on a big rocket and just light it, we can send him up pretty high.
Maps.
It's not hard.
rocketry,
It's not hard.
nationalism now.
It's not hard to go up to space. It's just hard to come back down and be alive.
Yeah.
You can just set someone on a rocket and shoot it upwards. We could probably all do that. And we should maybe do that. We should maybe send a monkey to space.
Okay.
And just dab on Elon Musk. And say, look, here's our monkey. Where's your monkey in space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's send you to space and you can call him out.
Maybe I will go to space. Maybe in future, listeners, you will see me in space. Could be.
Could be.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Is he foreshadowing? Have you ever heard of, are you familiar with Minus World?
No, I have no idea what any of that was about. I just kind of rolled with it.
Okay, so, listener, are you familiar with Minus World?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, good. So, I bet some of them are. But this is a deep cut of nerdiness here. But I was pondering it, and then I thought, oh, maybe I figured out, maybe we can leverage Super Mario Brothers to understanding reincarnation or something.
Oh, no.
I know. That's the same thought I had when I had the thought.
Mm.
But I pursued it. So in the original Super Mario Brothers, there was essentially like a bungle, a bundle of unused disaster code, like that was trial and error that was like left over in the game.
Okay.
Sort of. It's someone that actually knows the technicalities specifically is like, that's not right, but it's sort of that.
Okay.
And it ended up creating an unbeatable level that the player could accidentally access and get trapped inside forever.
That sounds awesome.
Right. So you know those the warp pipes? Everyone knows the warp pipes.
Yeah.
In the original first Nintendo, the first Mario Brothers, right? So in the second stage, there's the 3 of them. In the second stage, World 1, I guess 1-2, there's the underground stage, and you jump up over the bricks above the pipe you're supposed to go into, and you run past it, and you get to a little warp area that has 3 pipes in it, right?
All right.
And there are the pipes say World 2, World 3, or World 4.
The warp zone.
You warp zone, and you can jump in them. And it takes you to the different world. You skip some levels. And, in fact, there are 3 such warp zones in the game. The first one we just talked about. The third one is identical in shape. It has the 3 pipes also, and it's in World 4-2 after you climb a vine. But the second one is also in World 4-2, which has a single pipe, not 3.
Mm-hmm.
It has one in the middle, and it takes you to World 5. Okay, so the minus world happens because of that second pipe warp area with only the 1 pipe.
Okay.
Because it bucks the trend of having the 3. So the little, not to get too technical here, but in the game code, the definitions of where the warp pipes tell the game to send the player, like which world, are in the ROM in offset 87FS, which I'm sure all of our listeners knew. Right, and this line of code has 3 sets of 4 numbers. They all end in a 00. And they are as follows. The first set is 04030200. So it ends in the 00. The second set is the third set is 08070600, and the middle set is 24052400. Following? Did that correspond to anything in your head?
Different level destinations.
Correct. Yeah. So the first one was 04, World 4, 03, and that is the warp pipes 4, 3, and 2.
Right.
And the other one was 08, 07, 06. And the middle one, remember, there's only the 1 pipe, and it had 2405 for World 5, 24. Okay? Now, Worlds 2-4 don't exist. Mm-hmm. And actually, that's in hexadecimal. If you don't know hexadecimal, it's a bit confusing. But 2-4 in hex is 36 in normal numbers.
Gotcha.
So it's like written like 36, World 36, World 5, World 36. Now, World 36 doesn't exist. And they chose 36 because in the Mario font, in the hexadecimal, 2-4 is the same for like a space. Like it's just a carriage return.
Okay.
So it doesn't show up as anything. Because if you put it anything else, there would not be a pipe and it would say world whatever above the empty space, right? So there's this pipe with the blank space there. So it doesn't look like there's a non-existent pipe with like a world label on it. But the thing is, as far as the game is concerned, there's the warp pipe 5, and then there is 2 other warp pipes on either side, each leading to level 36, hex 24. They just don't exist, but their portals are there.
Oh.
As far as the game is concerned, right?
Right.
And that blank space. So if you're in World 1-2 and you're supposed to run over the bricks.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was very soon, when kids were playing the Mario game when it first came out, was that if you go, instead of jumping over the bricks, because people didn't know that, they would try to go the normal way through that pipe and go up and finish the level. And the kids being kids would be jumping around and stuff. And if you do it just right, Mario will jump and he'll hit the middle of that pipe that takes you up to the top place to beat the level, the normal way, and he'll clip through it. It's a little bug, and he goes through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And when he does that, the game tracks Mario's position only at the top. And when he moves through the game in a way he's not supposed to, his position isn't tracked. And so long story short, you are pushed through the wall to the warp place, but the warp values of 040302 are not loaded. And instead, the warp values of the middle warp zone, 240524, are loaded over the pipes that now exist.
Okay.
So now you can go down the first pipe to World 36, which is blank. It's a carriage return. And when you go through it, it spits you out into a new level that says blank world blank -1. which looks like -1, world -1.
Okay.
And that's what they call the minus world.
And how did this world, like, how did the construction of this world get
That's
there?
the thing, isn't it? That's because you would think, like, if you think in video games.
I mean, is it playable? Is it there?
It's you can go through the whole thing.
Okay.
It's an exact. It's not an exact, but it's a copy. It's like a blorfed copy.
Okay.
Like if you made a copy and then like went blorf over it, like you grabbed it and was sort of like blorp, it would be that of World 7-2. It's an underwater swimming level. And it chooses this level to replicate for a very similar reason we discussed about the warp pipes, like values being loaded wrong, right?
Gotcha.
But when you go through the pipe at the end of the level, it just spits you back out at the beginning. So Mario literally he gets locked in this infinite loop hellscape of the minus world where he can never escape.
That's unfortunate.
Right, isn't it?
Yep.
You just swim through the level, you dodge the bloopers, you go through the pipe, and then you're back at the beginning. And then problem. Now Mario is stuck, and in Mario's head, this is very bad. Because it's like that horrible nightmare where like you go through a door and you come back at the same place.
I haven't had that one.
Well, now you will. But so the thing is, as far as anyone knew for ages, there was just the minus world, the one minus world. And people have known about this. I think its existence was publicly revealed in Nintendo Power issue 3.
Okay.
Because people discovered it and like on accident, and people would write into Nintendo and be like, "Did you know there's like this extra level, this bonus level?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?"
For our younger listeners, Nintendo Power was a magazine published by the Nintendo company all about their games.
Right, before internet, you had a magazine.
It was like a paper, sort of like a book but floppier.
Yeah, it was like Twitch streaming but in paper form.
There you go.
Yeah, and it would tell you like cheat codes and stuff, and like tell kids like how to beat levels and Easter eggs in the game.
Right.
And so people would write into Nintendo via physical mail, and they'd be like, "Did you know there's this extra level?" And Nintendo was like, "Hmm?" And they looked it up and like, "Oh, interesting. There is an extra unbeatable level." And that's as far as but as the game moved from the Nintendo to the computers, people started making emulations of it, and putting it on a PC that you could then change the subtle values in the actual code of the game. We found that there's not just one minus world. There's 256 minus worlds.
Really?
Yes. And that, like I said, it's strange because no one made them. Like you would think, just in a naive way, that you have to like program a level for it to exist. But as it turns out, if you make a virtual universe, it appears to almost always have a corresponding virtual underworld that can be accessed that is semi-coherent.
Really?
Yes, and I will go through numerous examples of these. But when you make a universe, an enclosed universe of sufficient complexity, you tend to make, unbeknownst to you, also along with it, an underworld that is accessible.
This sounds like malarkey to me.
I know, doesn't it?
Yes.
However, it is provably true in many instances. And I'm just going to state that in the instances where it is not yet true, it's just because someone hasn't figured it out yet. which is an easy out for me.
Indeed.
Right? But I think there's something to it. And even if it doesn't hold in all cases, it holds in enough cases that it's an interesting thought.
Okay.
Because what we're doing when we're making little video games is we're sort of making little tiny self-contained universes in a way. Like if you were a character in the game, it feels like a self-contained thing. And I was thinking about this in relation to simulation theory. Because number 15 and I were talking, and he always brings up simulation theory. And I was like, okay, well, let's explore it, give it. And then I was like, oh, maybe. Is simulation theory really saying anything different than saying the world is made of language? And they just put a techno spin on it.
Right.
Which is something I've always believed, is that the world is made of language. The world is made of language, not particles.
It was spoken into existence.
Right, and it makes sense that it's not just like a thing. It's like when you think about it, it makes more sense than the world being made apart. But anyway, so there are 256 of these fake levels, of these minus levels. And like I said, you can only access the one in the regular game so far as we know, although there are probably ways to access all of them without using any hacks. But if you want to access them easily, all you do is you go into that register in the code and you change the numbers of where the things point you, and you point them to other non-existent levels. And then you go down the pipe. And it turns out that in a large number of cases, and because there are 256 different possibilities, there are 256 levels. And that a large number of them are not only playable, but like somewhat enjoyable to play. But they're all blorfed. They're all like a bizarro version. Which is I find this very interesting that this happened and no one intended it to. Because it's like no one programmed it. Like there's 9-1. There's not, like the world's ended 8 in Mario. Mm-hmm. But you can go into 9-1 and it's a 6-2 variant. It's a world 6-2 variant. But it has Mario walking on the ground. But then he can also swim in the sky as though he's underwater. And all the colors are neon pink. And some of the bricks are pieces of coral. Right? So like some of the brick blocks have been replaced with pieces of coral from the underground.
What on earth? Right.
And then there's world A-1, because when you're in the heck, it swaps around to alphanumerics. Mm-hmm. And it says, which is a night level with bricks that aren't there, but are instead daytime blue sky holes in the black night. So like instead of a brick, it's the brick shape, but it's nighttime and it has a blue sky through that brick. And also a level you can swim while not underwater. But then when you get to the end of it and you go to the flag is not there, and instead the ground drops away and Mario just swims into an eternal void that goes on forever. We just swim and 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 swim. And then until the timer runs out. So that's weird. And then there's level B1, which is a 3-1 variant that has turtles falling out of nowhere. And they walk through the floor, and sometimes when you jump on them, they turn into a Goomba instead of dying. And it ends with the crossing the bridge thing and hitting the axe, but there's no Bowser to beat. It's just, he's just gone. And you go, and it gives you the message. You go through the thing, and it's like, "Thank you, Mario, but Peach is in another castle, and there's no Toad there talking to you. It's just someone, just emptiness." And there's C1, which is a 1-4 variant, which is again glitch turtles all underwater, another bridge. D1's a 3-4 variant. E1 is just black space and a single mystery block floating in it, and then when you start, Mario just falls till he dies. And then there was world G1, which is interesting. It's very interesting because that's a variant of 1-2, and 1-2 was the place where we used this warp pipe hack to get to the minus world originally. So what happens if you visit the warp pipes in the minus world? Well, if you do it the normal way and you go up above the bricks and you don't glitch through the wall, they take you to other minus levels.
Oh, weird.
Isn't it? And then, but if you glitch through the wall, there's a little, if you do it just right, you can use them to go back to the normal world.
Oh, man.
Isn't that strange?
I'm kind of freaking out.
I know. And no one coded this to happen is the thing.
Okay, I've never heard of this, but I assume it's out there. So what's the normie explanation for all this that I'm going to go find when I Google it up?
Well, the normie explanation is that these levels are composed of instructions. And the normie explanation makes total sense, except I think that they're missing something. It is that it's like we have these elements in the game, like these sprites exist in the game, and there's instructions, there's information, there's rules about how each of the sprites is handled. Like if the sprite is a brick block and Mario is big and he jumps at it with his head, it breaks. And if it's a turtle and Mario jumps on it, it turns into a shell that it can be kicked. Right?
Right.
And so all these sprites, and that these levels are composed of basically a length of pixels in which these sprites can be populated and their positions when they start.
Right, but if I were to take all that information and stick it in a box and shake it up and dump it out on the table, there would not be a playable level coming out of that.
Correct. And sometimes there's not. A lot of these levels just crash. Right? They just crash the game. The game freezes or it just...
Okay.
But some of them, a lot of them don't. And so you go... And some of them, bizarrely, are not variants of anything. Like I listed through variants. There's some levels which is just... There's like one level where everything is just cloud blocks.
Right.
And it has a bunch of turtles throwing... There's one where it's Bowser's there, but he's floating through the air like a blooper, and he's all white. And he's throwing hammers at you instead of fire. And there's one where Princess Peach is just sitting on a mushroom in the middle of the level. Just her little sprite is there looking, but you can't do anything with her. And then you just run past. I mean, it gets weird. Like, it gets really strange. Because it's one thing when you're like, oh, there's these variants of these levels, because it's gone through and it's wrapped around, like there's only so many levels. And so the counter of where to send you wraps around. But now it's a minus thing, so it chooses the same level, but all the pointers are off, so it populates it with weird enemy combinations. Like it's a Goomba sprite, but it's treated like a turtle shell or something, right? But then you get these levels which are not variants of anything. They are, like I said, there's an empty space where Mario just falls through. There's the world where he just swims into blackness forever. There's the one where Bowser's flying through the air like a blooper in an infinite cloud zone. And it's strange. I mean, like if you follow the code and you like what happens, it all makes logical. Like it all is like, oh, well, this happens because of that. But it's very complex, right? But my point is, no one like planned that to be.
I mean, what you're presenting here, and tell me if I have your position wrong. But it seems like you're saying that the act of world building, even in something like designing Mario, has, as part of that process, a metaphysical component that also gives rise to other possibilities in the thing you're building in real life that you don't intentionally create.
Correct. And my contention is that is just a metaphysical truth that exists also in our reality. Which is in part why weird paranormal things happen, and maybe why there's the underworld at all. Because every time we ever attempt to create a universe, in some case, even in literary form, even in just like take like Harry Potter, for instance. All right, J.K. Rowling writes these books or whatever, but then if enough people get on board with it, their questions start to pop up, like, well, what happens with this? And there's all these little plot holes and stuff. And then the fan world builds this mythology apart from her that always involves like weird slips in the universe or the underworld. Like this happens with Tolkien. People talking about all these weird bits and then like they build like, well, if this happens and this happened in the Silmarillion, then logically there must be XXX, and then it gets really strange.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And anytime you build a universe, you necessarily build its obverse. You build the upside down. You build the underworld. And so, like I said, the minus world's been there in Mario have been known for a long time. And since like really we put it on a computer and you could change the hashes manually, we've known about the 258. And people are like, well, that's a strange oddity. However, only very recently, as recently as 2019, was it realized that the same thing is true for the original Legend of Zelda.
Oh, man.
I know! And it took so long to find because it's very difficult to fall into it accidentally. Okay. Like in the first Mario, you can glitch through the wall, and then you're like, now I'm in minus World 1. And isn't that interesting? The symbology, too, because it's not minus World 1. As far as the code knows, it's World 36-1, but 36 is a blank space. They coded it. I don't know why they did that.
Right.
But that is the... And so it looks like you're going to the minus world. It's world blank 36. Like it's as far as the computer knows, it's putting up 36, but 36 is like basically clear font.
Yeah.
Right? And so then it's like it's minus world. And that happened, no one planned that. It just when you go into the underworld, it was like, well, naturally, it's the minus world. The universe is like, well, yeah, it's the upside down. So it's the minus, it's the negative. And so in 2019, okay, so Zelda's the original Zelda map is asymmetrical. It's not a square. It's a 16 by 8 area. Like blocks. So so like these, if you look at the map of Zelda on like in like a Nintendo Power,
mm-hmm.
It is a rectangle. It is twice as long as it is tall.
Okay.
And you can progress through each of these as you move left or right on the map. You go through a different scene on the block. So there's like 8 scenes that you can progress through up to down, and there's 16 scenes you can go through left to right. And these scenes each have a number, right, associated in like a number pair, like 1, 7 or 4, 3. And when you walk from like, say, horizontal 4, vertical 3 to horizontal 5, vertical 3, the game will pause for a second and then it loads scene 4-3. You were in 3-3 and then it loads 4, and it was just a different map with different enemies in it, right?
Right.
And these are each held by data points in the game, and they each go up to, they gave it enough information because everything's binary, it goes up to 16. But they're the same amount of data. So, if they only programmed a 16 by 8 area, right, the vertical could only go to 8. What happens if you put it to 9 artificially?
Mm-hmm.
Because the data format can hold the 16 values, 0 through 15. Like 0 counts as a number. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And the vertical data can also hold 15. It's just that in the game, you always ever just, when you get to 8, there's no way for you to progress through the wall
mm-hmm.
to get up to 9. Or there's no way at 0 to get down to 15.
Right.
But what if you have a little... What if you hack the game a little bit to make it where Link can pass through walls? And then you're at the bottom, and you go down. Well, the 1616 data set says, well, now I'm at 0, 0. And then it rolls over, and it says, now I'm at 0 horizontal, and I'm at -1. And it doesn't break the game. It, in fact, gives you... basically an exact obverse of the top world, which is very strange.
Why would it do?
Why would it do? And like I said, again, it is blorfed. It's blorfed. When you walk out of Hyrule and you go down into the minus world, or perhaps we should say low rule, mm-hmm. It appears to be a buggy hellscape. But it's still walkable. You can still walk through it. And you can still kill enemies in it, and you can still die in it, right? And it's full of graves. Yeah, I mean that is very weird. Like because there's a couple of scenes in the original top part where you're going through a graveyard in the cliffs, and when you go to the Minus World, almost every scene is populated by graves, by the grave sprites. Like you've gone literally into the underworld. So you go to the Minus Zone, and for some reason the code is just like, well, the thing that happens here is it's populated with gravestones.
That is really weird, man.
I know, it's very strange. So it's intrinsic to the like why this happens but it's intrinsic to the nature of the Upside Down, the inverse, the underworld, to be the place of death and the place where things stop making total sense. Like like I said, they're the weird thing is they're playable. Like you get to the Minus World by ignoring the. How do you get to the underworld? You make Link ignore walls, and then, right? What else goes through walls in our world that is from the underworld?
Ghosts.
Isn't that weird? Like to go into the realm of the ghosts, Link has to be able to walk through the walls just as they do. I find that very.
Now, if you go to 9, does it do something?
Right. Well, it's the same thing. Yeah, it wraps around to the top of the bottom. Yeah.
Either way, it ends up at the same.
You can get there either way.
Oh, weird.
And so it's sort of like, is that what's happening in our world in a way? Like, is spirit, like, is that why ghosts do walk through walls? They're from the underworld and they clip. You see what I'm saying? It's symbolically very resonant that this happens and no one meant for it to happen. So, like I said, the original Zelda dev team took pains to make sure that you couldn't walk through the walls, right? So you need a little bit of a hack. But it's, once you do, it's just like, it's like the fairy folklore, like in UFO encounters and stuff. You pass through like a grave mound, and then you're in the underworld. Yeah.
I have a technical question here.
Yes.
So if you were to, and this is gonna belie my ignorance of computer coding, if you were to take all the code from the Zelda game and just like splay it out on paper, could you point to something that says, okay, here's all the here's grave number 5 in Upside Down Hyrule? I mean, is it there, or is it just arising from what?
It would be there, but not explicitly, because like code is like the way there's like sets of rules, and then the way those rules are played out there's an infinite amount of ways that they can be played out depending on what the player does.
Right. But like when they were designing the normal levels, some designer said, put tree right here. Correct. Right? So if there's a tree in Underworld, there should be some code that says put tree right here. So is it known that there is or isn't?
You wouldn't be able to see it. I mean, I guess that you could, but it would be very, very implicit and not explicit.
So there's a difference between the world that arises of the normal gameplay. That arises in one way that's intentionally designed.
Correct.
But then the underworld is extrapolated according to a set of rules that the game generates it.
Right, because it doesn't know what to do. So you've gone into a place where it's like, well, this scene is not explicitly defined, and your values are off. And so then it goes through to look up how to populate it, and it finds its lookup table of what to populate it with was never intentional. And so it just pulls from there what it thinks is the correct answer, plops it in, and it turns out that that's a lot of gravestones and weird upside down creatures. For instance, the standard first enemy you fight, those Octoroks, they spit the little balls at you. Mm-hmm. They now spit boomerangs.
Oh.
Or sometimes spears.
Okay.
And when they die, instead of dropping hearts, they sometimes drop bombs. And there are caves, just like in the normal world, the plus world, the overworld. But when you go in, the merchant inside that sells you stuff is like cut in half, his head removed, and he talks to you and asks for negative money for items that don't exist and that you can't have.
Oh, man.
Like sometimes he's literally inside out. He like looks like he's gone, like he's being turned in a mirror, but like his head is like on one side of it's like aliasing. And sometimes his head is just removed, and it's like this. It just looks so much like the Greek idea of Hades, where you go down and there's these shades and they're missing their body parts and they're talking to you in these weird, cryptic ways. It's like this. It's like that just happened on its own. And there's one, you go into the place where the sword shows up in the overworld, and there's the old man, and he's there, and he says, it's dangerous to go alone, take this, but he doesn't have anything to give you. But you can attack him this time, but he's immortal and doesn't die. And you go a screen over, and he shows up again, but now he has a fire-breathing water creature behind him who appears to be swimming in the sand instead of the water. And he says, it's the old man, same old man. And he says, leave your life or money.
Oh, dude.
I know. He says, leave your life or money. Some enemies appear, for lack of a better word, like Inside Out. The music plays as normal through all this, or sometimes it's a little sped up or something. The dragon you fight at one point is replaced by 3 red moblins which move together in a snake-like fashion, as if joined at the hip. You can stab and kill. There's fire like in the land, but you can stab and kill the fire, which you're not supposed to do. One of the dungeons in the Midas world is a shop with an inverted store owner that sells nothing. One cave has someone invisible say GV with an upside down 13 on the screen. Isn't that strange? 13 the unlucky number, and that's what shows up. Instead of the chest, it's an upside down 13.
Oh, man.
It's all very bizarre. You touch a fairy, and instead of it healing you, it just multiplies into 3 or 4 of them. You know? And so like the whole thing is this: someone took Zelda, put it in the bag, shook it up, and then dumped it back out. And the weird thing, you would think it just wouldn't work. It'd be broken. But it is a playable somewhat. I mean, you can walk through it, kill enemies, and be killed, and progress through the scenes, although there's no real objectives to be obtained, because everything is like the old man saying, leave your life or money, and he has his head cut off. But you'd think it'd just be broken, but it's not. Instead, you've made a bizarro world. And here's the thing. Basically, every game has some sort of Midas world. It's true on the NES, but it's also true on newer systems, and they've taken steps to make sure you don't get to it or fall into it. But it's almost always there, sometimes intentional, sometimes not. Like, are you familiar with the Elder Scrolls games? Skyrim and Morrowind?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So you've played Skyrim, I assume some of our... Okay.
I like Skyrim.
Are you familiar with the dead body cleanup cell?
No.
So, in order for the game to function properly, when you kill someone in the game, when you kill a character or when a character dies, the game's to know what's happening in the story, the game still has to reference the person. And to do that, they have to still exist.
Okay. In
a way. So when you kill somebody, they don't go away. I mean, they vanish, but they go to a location on the map, far off beyond the map. Like if you have the values of the map, right, that are possible, and you add like 1,000 to them. So they're way beyond the boundaries of that actual map you're able to get to. The dead bodies are transported to a cell that is in the shape of a cross that exists out there in the infinite black. And there they pile up, and some of them reanimate and come back to life. and just walk around as naked shades. They lose their clothing, and they walk around as naked shades in this eternal blackness.
That's really... But somebody did that to make the game
Someone
work.
did it on purpose,
yeah.
but the thing is that was necessary to do on purpose.
Right, the fact that it was necessary. Okay.
Now, there is also, in the same way, there is also, like, you can clip through walls and get to these weird positions as you can in the Mario game.
Right.
But the Skyrim game is so complex that making such underworld, like when you clip through it, things are less likely to be playable.
Okay.
Although sometimes they are, like when you go through mountains and stuff, and you get into these weird positions where like things are upside down. And I imagine, my suspicion is that if you did it correctly, you could probably access such a place, but that it's very hard. And by the end of this, you'll see why I think that. There's also in the room there in Skyrim, there's the developer room, which is also far off the map, where you go and like every item that exists in the game is there. And you can go there. You can, if you have the computer, you can say put character at this place, and you go there, and it's like there's buttons, and you can press to make any enemy spawn or any weapon or any chest or whatever. Right?
Weird.
Yeah, and so it's this strange. To make the game work, they basically had to put in a hell where people go when they die, or an underworld, not even really a hell. But an underworld, they go when they die and their shades walk around in the nude. And if you teleport your character there, they're like all standing there and they talk to you. Like, hello. You know? It's very sort of strange. But the game needs that to function properly. The underworld has to be there. And you find this in lots of, like, there's this famous one. If you get on YouTube and you say Super Mario 64 Parallel Universes, you will find the most iconic nerdy video game thing that ever happened. Which is this guy he was trying to beat Super Mario 64, only pressing the A button once.
What?
Right, the jump button, and he was like, "Can we beat it just pressing it one time?" And he was like trying to get. And there's this whole thing about, he said, I did it in a half A press. And like, an A press is an A press. You can't do it. And he's like, no. And he goes to this giant autistic thing to be like, an A press is consisted of depressing the A button and then releasing. And I'm only depressing. Therefore, it's a half A press. Which is great. But he does this insane thing. Like, if this energy had been put toward doing something useful, that would be amazing. Where he realizes that like the velocity of Mario is unbounded if Mario is against an object. So he like just he backs Mario up against a wall and like tapes the stick down for 11 hours. And so now the velocity of Mario is just counting up in this ticker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it releases and Mario teleports because he's basically going the speed of light in the game, and he clips through all the walls and ends up in a parallel universe. It is a parallel universe because like everything is, because it's pixel values that wrap around, right? So there's 256 locations. What if you're at 250? Like every, like, I forget the exact specifics of it, but every fourth integer is basically you're on an identical plane, but there's no objects in it. And he's like, so I do this, and if I do this twice, I can boop, boop, and I can jump across, and now I'm at the finish line, and I didn't have to release the A press. It's very strange and technical, but it's become a meme, because he's like, he's giving you this thing about A presses, and he goes, but before we do that, and he's this kid, we have to talk about parallel universes. And then this graph comes up, and he's like showing you all these things, like, this guy has really done his Mario homework. Because you're like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, before I tell you about how we now we talk about parallel universe, and he draws these graphics. And he's like, and then he does it, and you're like, what? And he just jumps from like the beginning to like the end of it's wild. And Mario has been like the testing ground for a lot, because Mario is one of the most played games,
sure,
in the world. And what you also find out is that not only is there this underworld, but that the world can be, you can program the universe from within the universe.
What?
I know. Right? So first of all, like even if simulation theory were true, then it seems like it might still be necessary for like Sheol, Hades, the underworld, Hades, the minus world to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Like it might in fact make it all the more obvious that it does. If this sort of stuff holds true as you progress up to the levels. And I think that one of the things of the universe, like I've said before, reality is fractal, so things that hold at different levels hold at all levels. But then also what you get is you get programming the world from within the world. So there's this Super Mario World for Super Nintendo. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's something called the credits warp. And using this, you can beat the game in 45 seconds. So you transcend the game. And this is, again, somewhat recent. This was found in, I think, 2017.
Okay.
So basically, in the very first level of the game, you get your Yoshi, and then there are roughly 6 phases you need to do in a very specific order. And when I say specific, I mean like you need to be on the exact pixel. One is place 6 shells, and you have to do that in the order of 3, 4, 2, 1, and then the other 2 don't matter. But when there's those line of turtles, you have to hit them, and you bounce on the third one first, then the fourth one, then the second one, then the first one, and then whatever other 2 you want. You have to eat 10 berries with Yoshi. You have to glitch 2 berries, which means you eat them, but you have to make Yoshi's hitbox get there before his tongue. Then you place a P-switch in a very specific location, break a turn block, and then you perform what's called an item swap glitch, and then, ta-da, the game is over and you won.
How in the world did anybody figure that out?
Well, someone was just trying to, because they realized that like the end of the game is triggered by a very specific set of numbers in the memory, basically.
Okay.
Because like when you get down to the assembly language, it's just zeros and ones. And so he said, could I artificially set the game's memory to that value that says now trigger the credits as though you've ended the game? And what if I just, and so what he does is he goes through, and he basically had a thing, a computer assist tool where while he was playing the game, he could see what the numbers were in the memory, right? And so as he's changing it, and so he's saying, okay, if I do this and do that, and he basically just sat around for a long time and figured out a specific sequence of events necessary to then like get it to go, okay, now it's 1 digit away, and then boop, and then the game's the do you win the game, it's all over, it took 45 seconds. And so this has become a speed run. And the speedrunning community is remarkable for these things because they figure these things out all over the place. Like, and now you can beat the Mario Kart level in 2 seconds because if you go backwards, then the counter thinks that, and you go forwards at this specific event, then it thinks that you completed a lap even though you just went backwards over the line and came back forwards, right? And they do all these things to basically reprogram the game from within the game. And then you think, is that something that we are doing when we get into our weirder physics?
Yeah, or magic.
Or magic, right? So here's the thing. So if you think about it, the underworld, even on a technical level, is in so many ways a mirror employing all the archetypal elements as the underworlds that we've always talked about in our mythologies and religions.
Okay.
You get there by walking through walls, just like ghosts. It's full of graves. It's a place of infinite recursion. Like you go through and the Sisyphus rolls the rock up the hill and then he has to do it again and then he has to do it again. You never get out. People exist in inverted form or with pieces missing. The color palette is all off. You can never get your bearings. The up and down is not. It's a place where the dead are quite literally sent. Like in the case of Skyrim, there goes the dead. So I find the underworld levels as being essentially levels formed out of an excess of junk data. It's sort of similar. It's sort of similar to the description of hell as like a garbage dump or Gehenna. You know, it's like there's the garbage dump.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, it's like when you make a reality has an excess. It has bits of leftover pieces. It just always will. And you don't want to end up there in the leftover pieces bin. And so I think maybe a way of understanding the underworld is that it's a place that's not put together. Like it's a realm of chaos, symbolized in most ancient cultures by being the depths of the sea. And it's very interesting that in like the minus levels of Mario, so many of them are underwater even when they don't seem to be. Like you're still can swim, even though it looks like the sky. So you've descended into the realm of chaos and now you're underwater and you're Super Mario. Isn't that just weird?
It is super duper weird.
It's like reality must exist according to these principles, and when you make another reality, it must also exist according to these principles. It's and like the underworld, it's a place of things unfinished. They just trail off into infinitudes of nothing. Or they're recursive. You go through and then you're back at the beginning. They're cut in half, turned inside out. All these images we have of shades, and it's, you know, you expect it just to freeze up or crash or something, but that's not. They exist, but they're incomplete. The levels, they work, but they're not. They've got these gaps in them and strange things. Like they're in fact not whole, which is to say, not holy. They're literally, in the strictest definition of the term, unholy levels. They're the unholy levels. And you go down to the minus world, which again didn't have to be the minus world. Could have been, but it is the minus world because symbology happens. And it must happen. Right? And so I think that what is meant by the idea of the underworld, the realm of the shades, is the idea that that's where people and things go when they die because they're no longer complete. They're just like they're not whole anymore. Spirit and body come apart and they fall, as it were, between the cracks, between the gaps in reality, between the walls, right? And so it's not like it's not so much like it's a different place as so much as it's phase shifted. You're clipping through the edges, maybe. I don't know. I just find that a very interesting parallel. That there's something really, because it happens over and over again. Like all these, like Zelda and Mario, and then you're in Skyrim, and then the parallel universes in the 64, and then you can. It's just very strange. All that to say is simulation theory. What's the difference between that, saying we're computer code, and saying the world is made of language? I mean, really.
I mean, good point. Yeah.
Right? Because computer code is a language. You're taking the
same idea and cramming it into a computerized frame of reference.
Right, but I was resistant to that, but then I thought, well, if I can use simulation theory to help Neil deGrasse Tyson think about God better, then maybe it's fine. Like if he's more comfortable talking about us being in a computer program than about the world being made of language, because computer code is a language.
Right.
Right? It's a type of language that you write in, and there's different types. And the world is made of language. And I was having this discussion with my wife. We were talking about people. How it's become cliche for people to say things like, "Well, I don't like to put labels on things. I don't like to put labels on things." Like the trans issue. Why bother calling someone a man or a woman? What difference does it make, right? The quote is like, "What's it matter? What's the difference?" And it's because like labels, naming. This is why so much of magic is about naming. Or the old quote that says, "The beginning of wisdom is calling things by their true names." Is how you orient yourself in the world. It's like why God asked Adam to name the animals. Like right. At first, I was talking to someone like that. Why? I said, well, try running a grocery store without putting labels on things.
And it kind of makes me think that the if you were to go around and say, well, we're going to remove the labels from male and female, you're sort of undoing God's work of creation in a way.
very literal sense.
you're trying to undo it, or you're trying to remove the consciousness of man from the structure that God has put upon creation. You're trying to like isolate the human consciousness from it.
Yeah. And I think that if you do that enough, actually reality itself breaks down, not just our awareness of it.
Maybe
Right?
that's the goal of the trans rights issue.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
to
like-
unmake the universe.
I mean, literally, like, if you take this idea of minus worlds, like, right, like, why bother with labels like up or down, or east
Right.
or west, or
Right.
right or left? Like, try telling someone how to get somewhere, and you don't use left or right.
Mm-hmm.
You use labels because naming is how you orient yourself in the world. It's literally the case. It's literally the case in the cardinal directions, like north, south, east, and west. But it's more fundamentally the way you make the world intelligible.
And to the degree that you've removed the labels, you're then swimming in chaos, unknowable chaos.
Right. Like labels are how you know an apple from a pear. Or like, poison from food. Like you have because I think this is why this idea is present in ancient cultures, and literally almost every one, but made very explicit in the Bible. There's something, this idea that like thoughts, the mind, there's what you call it like heaven and earth. And like the heavens is not simply the sky. It is the sky, but it's also the realm of that which is formless, which has no body. Because when you look up, everything is increasingly transparent. The air you can see through, and then the sky, and as you go higher, then it's blue, and then it's black, and it's formless. And the earth below you is material and solid, and as you dig down deeper, it gets more solid, like you get to the bedrock. So it's the realm of raw material. And the idea they seem to be getting at is that creation is the meeting of heaven and earth, like where the idea, the formless idea, meets in a literal way the raw material to make a thing, right? Like it's not like a metaphor in any way. It's like the most straight, like you, listener, what are you? You're material, raw material from the earth. And then the breath of the sky, the spirit from the sky, the formless breath, because breath, wind, sky is this is why Christ is like, those born of the spirit are like the wind. It animates the raw material. And when you stop breathing, you die. Which is why the breath and the spirit, right? Like when you expire, to expire medically is to breathe out. Inspiration and expiration is in breathing in. It's why yoga, the central focus of the Hindu thing, is on the prana. Prana means breath. Something like the idea of the Holy Spirit. And nirvana in Buddhism means to blow out, like to breathe out. It's the idea of returning the spirit back to the source, like. But see, like where does the breath literally comes from the wind? It literally comes from the sky. And so all living things are this meeting of heaven and earth, this realm of formless idea with physical matter. And how does it, how does it know to do that? You don't put yourself together. Your mother doesn't put you together in her womb, not consciously. It just happens essentially through labeling, like naming, like in a very, very literal technical sense, like your body's making cells, and it's like, okay, this one is muscle cell, this one is cardiac cell, this one's bone, and that goes there, and this goes there. And then imagine what would happen if your body was like, why put labels on stuff? Why bother? That's what cancer is. Cancer is when your thing is like, I don't care where I am, I'm just everywhere. Why put labels on me? It's like when the bone cells start thinking they need to be in your stomach, you got a problem.
Yeah.
That's how you die. Like that's why like God in the Bible is called him who discriminates. Like Yahweh means that because he differences this from that. This is that, that's that. You take this raw material of earth and you say, boom, over here, this over there, separate it out, and then you can make a thing. And I hear people being like, yeah, okay, Sumo, but that's a labored analogy. There's nothing literally labeling parts of your cells or your body and putting it together. To which I say, what do you think DNA is? Like it's software writing its own hardware. Like there's like the base pairs. It's a code. It's like You have your adenine, your site, and they in their various sequences, they form a code, literally an idea, literally words, language that make you. It's like the soul of you, the idea of you exists in language before it exists in matter. Right? And that's true of everything. Like the physics of the universe, it adheres to these. We talk about, I've always attacked people with this one because they're like, well, it's the laws of the universe. You're like, well, who put the laws there?
Yeah.
Like if the universe is operating according to like describable linguistic rules, that's strange. Right? And so you not only have this language about how your body's put together, but then how the molecules will react to each other and how the atoms will react in there. And so when you talk about someone like, well, God made you, it's very literal. It's like, yeah, the language from the heavens, which was you, mind comes before matter, and then you were spoken into existence. Like, in a literal way. So it's a bit, but then the rub is, what about the things that don't fit? Because we talked about that, like in the last episode regarding Satanism, like the dragon attacks by pointing to the remainder. Mm-hmm. Because like language doesn't always accurately define everything. Like, and it makes people say like names are useless. And it's a persuasive argument, even though it's dumb. Like, it's basically saying like, well, scientists go through all this trouble and they classify the animal kingdom and they developed all these criteria of like, here's a reptile, here's a bird, this is what makes an amphibian, this is what makes a mammal. And then someone comes along with a platypus and goes, fart noises, systems bunk, why bother?
Blow the whole thing up.
Blow the whole thing up.
Yeah.
Right? But see, the existence of platypi doesn't invalidate the existence of mammals.
Right.
Like, try running a vet's office and pretending like you can treat a bird the same way you can treat a cat. And then when the bird dies, your customer's all angry. You go, lady, look, platypuses. Okay? I don't want to put labels on things because...
That's exactly what our society is trying to do.
Exactly!
They're running a vet's office crazy. Without taxonomy. Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but it's the same thing. It's like, look, lady, there are platypuses. Therefore, the classification of mammal doesn't make sense. Therefore, to treat a cat any different than you would treat a bird or a lizard makes no sense.
Therefore, like, we're gonna put your son on estrogen pills or whatever.
Yeah, it's like
platypus.
Intersex people do exist. They're real, and you know they shouldn't be treated poorly. I think everyone agrees on that.
Talking about like hermaphroditism, kind of stuff.
Like that has always been a thing, and there will always be people who don't fit. But then to say that because there's pieces that don't fit in our linguistic classifications, that the linguistic classifications are null and void, is craziness.
Yeah.
It's literally totalitarian. It's like wanting everything under the system. And it's like the mark of a human is you can be like, well, this works and it's valid, but it also doesn't contain everything. Right? Like it's fine for my worldview and my intellect and my language to not encompass the entire cosmos of everything. And I think that may be a necessary component of free will, like this bit of space in that is undefined. Like sometimes if you're into archery, you know, you might get an old bow and arrow, and the guy hands it to you, and he's like, "Watch this one; it's got a bit of play in it." In the tips, right, or something. And that means the bow has a bit of uncertainty about how it's going to bend. Just the slightest bit. It won't do the same thing every time. And that sort of makes it seem like it has a life of its own, to be honest. Like the bow gets a bit of a say in how it's going to shoot. And like modern bows don't really do this because they're all precision and lasered and stuff. They're efficient, but they're dead. Right? And so like the margins, that ill-defined space, that play, is a necessary component of like having things, having choice maybe.
This is why people will choose a handmade object over a factory-made object, even though it's less efficient, less precisely made.
You're actually giving it some small bit of life.
Yeah.
Like some And so the idea that you say, well, there's intersex people, therefore gender's an illusion, is as ridiculous as saying there are platypi, therefore mammals are fake. Which is what people, I mean, it's the same logic.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as being like, well, look, we can't exactly tell where the boundary is between the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, so therefore the Pacific Ocean isn't real. Yeah, just because you can't point to like where exactly below Argentina they separate.
Right.
Right? It's like, no, like categories being not ironclad is a feature, not a bug. So if you take seriously the notion the universe is made of language, what we've learned by building real fictional digital worlds out of code is that these underworlds are created, these gaps are created by like the marginalia themselves. Like they don't fit, but no one made them, but they appeared to be a necessity that arise when you create a universe, even a 2D side-scrolling one. And so these gaps, you can fall into these gaps, which is maybe why the idea that Satan attacks from the margins and pointing to the margins always leads to hell, because that's the direct path which you fall through the gaps into the minus world.
Right. You end up in the underworld by doing things you shouldn't do or shouldn't be able to do, like clip through walls or whatever. Clip through walls.
Yeah, and you do that by ignoring the categories. I'm not quite sure how it works. This is still a working theory. Maybe our listeners can help.
As I was listening to this, I found it interesting that the simpler the code is, the easier it is to get to the underworld, and the more it's more likely that the underworld will be coherent and playable. And so as you scale up to more complex coding languages and complex games, your results in trying to do this are more unpredictable, and the means by which you do them are a lot more difficult. Mm-hmm. And so if you were to put in the universe's language, existence's language concept, if you scale up to whatever language our universe is coded in, it would be exceptionally difficult to manipulate it, coding the game within the game, so to speak. It would probably be very difficult to elaborate, sort of like I was asking you, how did somebody come up with this thing for the Super Mario World credits warp? Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you were to try to do something in real life, it would probably be quite difficult. And then to get to the underworld, you have to do something that is super weird and unnatural, like separating your spirit from your body.
Right. Or doing very unnatural, very unnatural, weird behaviors, like weird sex acts that cults seem to be involved in.
And then if you go back and you think about the Garden of Eden in these terms, you say, okay, so Adam and Eve by sinning introduced the ability to separate body and soul, and then the default result of that would be to go to the underworld. Mm-hmm. And God said, well, I don't want that to happen to Adam and Eve and to humans, so I'm going to fix that. I'm going to repair that.
Right. He puts in a warp pipe in the minus world that you can warp back out of.
Right.
I mean, sort of.
I was thinking of and thus follows the entire story of Christ redeeming us.
Right, which is in a way the warp pipe.
We've got to fix the error.
This analogy, yeah,
that was produced when we introduced the ability to separate body and soul.
Yeah, my warp pipe analogy is labored at that point.
Yeah, you can these concepts sort of map nicely onto each other when you're considering universes being created linguistically.
Yeah, and like you were saying, maybe that's why, when people are why do cults do these weird things? If you want to access the underworld, maybe you got to do the thing you're not supposed to do. You got to make it really weird.
Yep.
And get into a condition where you bet the equivalent of clipping through a wall, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Like having sex with an animal or something. Right. That's not supposed to happen. And the code is meh, 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 and then you fall through, and now you have access to the underworld.
Yeah, and you're probably using magic words and symbols and all that stuff to do it.
Yeah, and then you access the creatures of the underworld. They come through. It sort of makes sense.
It does in a weird, creepy way. It does
in
make
a weird,
sense.
creepy way. It makes weird, creepy sense.
Which is why God mercifully told us don't mess around with this stuff.
Yeah, he's the programmer, and he's like, listen, there's places you can clip through walls, and you really will not have a good time.
Yes.
But there's always people that are like, yeah,
I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, which I understand the impulse.
Did God really say that you would die?
Right.
If you
Did
ate
he not
the
say
fruit?
you're just gonna have a great time?
Or Underworld is gonna be rad.
Yeah, and Underworld maybe would be cool if you could get back out of it.
Yeah.
With no issues, but you can't because you become a part of it.
Right. You become like unintelligible chaos.
Yeah, you go down
And
there and you're
graves.
the merchant in the bottom of Zelda, in the underworld of Zelda, with your head cut off, going, give money or life for -3 rupees.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Yeah.
Give money or life, -3 rupees. Fire, fire, fire. Then you get stabbed to fire. It's like, this is strange.
Yeah.
But one more, like, I also found it interesting, like, in all the fairy folklore, and also in stuff like the Sphinx, when the guy is trapped by the Sphinx and he has to answer a riddle, you always get out of the realm of the fairies by answering a riddle. It's linguistic, like the fairies give you like a test, and it's linguistic prowess that gets you out of the underworld. Isn't that fascinating? If like this world is made of language, and then you fall through a gap in the language, then the way out is through a finesse of language. I don't know. But if there were ways out of the underworld for Mario and Link, is there for man? Maybe. I'm still mad at Elon Musk, though.
Well, that's understandable.
He's trying to get us in the underworld by putting it, like, that's another thing. Don't do it. Don't put the chip in your brain, because that wasn't meant to happen.
Yeah.
If you take the chip and you put it in your brain, you're going to start clipping through walls. You're going to think you're a monkey on a Tesla. And he's going to say, oh, now we're going to shoot you into space, but really you'll just be on your iPhone in a pod.
Is things are being done today that are permissible to man's ideas of good and evil because all their symbolic meaning has been stripped from them because of their presentation in scientific terms. So I was having a conversation with a friend recently where I said, America is a human sacrifice cult. And he said...
so true.
And he said, what? What? Come on, what are you talking about? And I said, well, it's been de-spiritualized, but children are routinely sacrificed for money and youth in this country. And that's what the abortion industry is.
Right. I can't have a kid because then I won't be able to be young.
Right. And so, like, you can talk about it in clinical terms and de-religiosify it, but what's the difference in sacrificing a baby to Dagon so that you can be wealthy and live forever or whatever? Like, functionally, it's the same thing. It's just we just have clinicalized all our thoughts about it.
Saying I'm going to abort the kid so that I can have more because I can't afford it and I need more disposable income is the same thing as saying I'm doing it to Dagon to get more money.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same process.
Real difference.
Right.
And so in that way, America is a human sacrifice cult because the governments of our federal government and our state governments are all orienting their policies and the use of their power to allow this to continue to happen in this country because the government says, well, we can't have a bunch of children running around that we're going to be responsible for because their parents didn't want them because that would cost a lot of money. And so we want that money, not all these kids to take care of. Therefore, we're not really going to ban abortion, even though some of our politicians will talk about it, because they also want to sacrifice these children for money.
Yes.
They're just gonna let you do it, for them, but they're gonna support you in it. Yeah. And so in that way, at the individual level, all the way up to the institutional level, America is a human sacrifice cult.
And it is, we also have that ritual in military terms, because we believe that we need to routinely sacrifice our own sons and daughters, and blow up children's soccer games in Yemen to have freedom or something.
Yeah, or something.
Like, I don't know. We just have to, like, if we don't have Gitmo, we don't have freedoms or something.
But a lot of people do get very wealthy off of that sacrifice of those lives. That's some more human sacrifice for you. Let's sacrifice little Yemeni kids and American soldiers' lives so that, the guys at Raytheon can make a bunch of money selling missiles or whatever.
Yeah, you despiritualize it, and this is, BAP talks about this, how everything is so clinical now. The whole world's a hospital. Yeah. It's like they want to sterilize everything literally and also like linguistically to make it be like, oh, this is just a health procedure and not a sacrifice to Dagon. But it is.
Yeah. Dagon doesn't have to be there for that to be the same thing, morally, spiritually speaking.
Right. And I have a sneaking suspicion that somewhere in the upper ranks of Planned Parenthood there's just a straight altar to Baal or something.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I think that
thought that.
I think it becomes explicit at some level. Like, have you ever looked up at the CERN rituals that happen at CERN, the particle accelerator? It's very strange.
Like the more you look into any of these institutions, the less clinical and scientific, and the more spiritual and often satanic they get.
Yeah, like why are you doing a weird ritual with Shiva, the god of destruction, at CERN? I don't. What are you doing? Yeah. And you just want to go up and say, "Stop being weird."
Yeah.
That's really.
I thought you guys were just doing science. I thought this was all just, nice, clean, neat, despiritualized work you're doing here.
We should just have a political party that's main message is stop being weird. Just be normal.
Coming from us, I don't know that message would resonate, but,
Well, yeah.
Maybe one day we can make that happen.
Be normal. That's a quote from I think it's the guy that founded the Thurius Society or the Theotherian. He was a UFO cult guy, and he gets up there and he's like, the message from the aliens is be normal. And you look around, it's this UFO cult, and he's like, that's what it would feel like.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah, that's us, I think.
Don't go to the minus world, people. And we are going to space. I'm going to space. Foreshadowing.
Sweet. I'm going to stay on the ground.
Oh, buy t-shirts.
Oh, yeah, buy t-shirts. If your size is sold out, contact me and maybe we'll set up another run here soon if you want a t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Mapsock.org, everybody.
The t-shirts keep you from going to the underworld. That's a fact. There's special fibers in them. Not Morgellons.